Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Tower of God, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, this is going to be one of the few occasions you'll actually hear me say, I've actually read the original material. I've read the manhwa, the webtoon series, a couple years ago. I actually read it many years before that, but then I lost my place and then I restarted it a couple years ago, and then it's been a couple years since I picked it up. If I remember correctly, I was in season 2, chapter 200 something. It was in the mid to late 200s. I don't want to say exactly what was going on from what I remember, just so I don't end up spoiling things, but they'll say there were some reunions happening. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, I've been waiting. I meant to start on this sooner, but now that I'm just making the decision to watch an anime, I'm making a conscious effort to start off with this one, because this is when I found out this was getting adapted. I was super pumped because I let it slip my mind that this is a great series, and because I always forget this series is banging. This is an amazing. It's probably one of my favorite fantasy series, but I always constantly it's almost underrated in my head because I constantly forget. Right, this is a dope series, but regardless. An interesting start to the story. I also thought was interesting. I'm going to note some of the changes I am aware of. I'm not going to note everything because it's been a couple years, so I'm not going to remember everything. But I like how they decided to start this off. I believe it's media res. I always forget the term. It's where you basically start at the end and then you rewind to the beginning. Starting off with Bomb with the eel, getting swallowed by it. That's so interesting because that's not where the webtoon series started. It was actually I think the whole him chasing out the Rachel thing, what you get after the intro, that's actually where it starts, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just for one, it's just so wild to see it all in motion and everything, and to, put voices to these characters that have been kind of voiceless, for so long, for me at least. So hearing, it's just also, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's wild. When you know where this series goes, if you read it, I'm not going to spoil anything, it's wild to go back to the beginning of this series knowing where it goes in certain regards, and you're man, it makes you feel completely different about this intro. Because I think it's so interesting how the story does start off, it is so sweet of boy finds girl, he's kind of obsessed with girl, she's kind of his everything, which that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way in real life, is don't make someone your everything. Sadly, that's, I guess you made the argument, sadly, Bomb has to learn it the hard way, considering he's literally putting himself, he's not even afraid of death, because, being alone again after his circumstances, Rachel brought light to his world, both figuratively and literally. So for him, she's his everything, and he will do whatever it takes to get to her, even if it means climbing his tower, What I also thought was interesting too, I could be mistaken, I don't believe that the webtoon series starts you by showing you some of the, I think that's just the thing of showing you who's to come. It shows you 5 big characters that you're oh, wow, we're just throwing them out there. Like I said, I could be mistaken, but I don't think they were in the intro of the series, the webtoon, but I could be mistaken. I keep saying that, but I'm sure it's considered a manhwa, isn't it? Not just a webtoon series, it's a manhwa webtoon, right? I could be mistaken. I could be completely wrong on that. But I'll just keep referring to it as a manhwa for now. But, yeah, it's just Bomb, being the irregular that he is. And it's hearing that term, I was oh, irregular, right? It brought me all the way back, I love that's such an interesting and a very important term for, once again, I'm keep rattling this off. You're going to hear me say that a lot. But for anyone that hasn't read this series, that is a term you want to pay attention to, irregular. It means, obviously they talk about it a little bit. Most people who go into the tower, and this is the term, the way they set up this episode 2 is going to explain it more, but regulars are people who were invited to the tower. People like Bomb are called irregulars, letting you know, if they have a term for it, there means there's a couple others, and that's a whole thing in itself. But irregulars are people, as Hidon and I think Yuri kind of talk about it, it's people who find their way into the tower by their own sheer will. They're not officially invited in, and they find their way in regardless. So, and that's what makes Bomb so special, that he is one of these irregulars, which also I love. Princess Yuri and Evan, I'm oh, dude, oh, it's all coming rushing back. But also that smiley tooth, sharp tooth bastard Hedon, it's like, oh, look at you, you scheming little bastard. I love it. I was like, oh, I hate you so much. Because you're always just like, just that toothy smile of his. It's just so sinister. But like, you know, obviously Bomb's got to take this test if he wants to follow after Rachel, you know. Like I said, even that intro, like of like, right, this is the story of a girl who wanted to see the stars, and the boy Bomb, who she was kind of his she's kind of his everything. He chases after her, you know. And it's like, once again, it's just like, oh, dude, like, once again, kind of, it's so interesting because it starts off like, it seems like it could be like a heartwarming series of like, very like Romeo and Juliet, like two lovers kind of like separate. Not really lovers. It's just she's someone important to him because they never really define Rachel and Bomb's relationship like that. It's not like is it a brother or sister relationship? Is it a boyfriend girlfriend? It's just a thing of she's an important person to him. That's kind of what it kind of like Sora and Kairi. Like that's definitely boyfriend girlfriend territory, but it just simply just gets referred to as Kairi's like the most important person to Sora. It's a very similar dynamic in this regard. But I love that Yuri kind of calls him out for just like being kind of an idiot for just like charging in like into this, especially because it's such a hard level that it's hard, you know, first test that is like, you know, that shows. But I think Hedon did it because Bomb is an irregular, because irregulars are special in the tower in many different regards. Once again, we'll kind of talk about that more as the series itself, you know, the anime itself will actually get there, but it is so fascinating of like why he gave Bomb such a hard test, but it's like, right, you being an irregular kind of potentially gives you an unfair advantage because you are irregular amongst the tower, so we got to go irregularly when it comes to your test. I don't know if they ever talk. I think they have talked about that a little bit too. Maybe that time works a little differently. I can't, like, once again, you have to correct me, like, because it has been years. Because Rachel just went into the tower, but she probably got a different first test than Bomb. But Hedon did run into her, so it's like, she probably didn't, who knows if she completed this test, and the time in between Bomb getting there, like, the time outside and time inside the tower probably works differently. I don't know if they've ever specified that. And if you are curious, to my knowledge, from where I am in the series, they never talk about outside the tower like that. They just talk about inside the tower, so like where Bomb and Rachel come from. This is as much as you get from my recollection that they really cover it. Bomb situation, not remembering anything, long hair and everything. Till I'm like, oh man, I forgot you originally had long hair. That's so wild. You know, just where things kind of go later on. It's like, oh, it's wild to remember you had long hair in the beginning. It's just interesting. But like his circumstances of like how he ended up where he did and everything. Where did him and Rachel, did they meet under other people? Doesn't seem like it. They only had each other. That's why Bomb latched onto her so hard. But for her, it's like she grew up in this dark world, and it's like, I'm tired of this dark world. I want to see the sky. I want to see stars. You know, I want to, you know. So that's what started her journey. And Bomb's story is simply like, hey, I'm following you. I'm a little all over the place, but like I said, I am legitimately so damn giddy about this, just because I legitimately just bringing back my love for this series. But like I was a little all over the place, right? But my point was like I just feel like time worked a little different. Like, so Rachel's already passed her test and kind of moved on, because it doesn't seem like, because time doesn't work differently in the tower, at least to my recollection. Maybe it does from floor to floor. I don't think it does. So, but I think it was probably an outside to inside thing. But like I said, because Bomb is on a regular, it could have been a thing of he was given a completely different test than Rachel. Rachel was probably given an easier test because he's an irregular. He was given a harder test. But regardless of anything, Bomb was going to rush in there, you know. And so Hedon suggests, oh, why don't you give him Black March? And Evan's like, what? No, don't listen to him. And she does it anyway. Because Yuri kind of does whatever the hell she wants. She's the very rebellious princess. And so he takes Black March and kind of walks in there and says that he will give it back to her. But him actually making the right move in that case of like letting the eel swallow him. Evan's like, actually, that was a smart move. And Yuri's like, why the hell you say anything? He's like, well, it doesn't matter knowing what to do, because most people are so afraid of death that they wouldn't willingly get inside of that thing's stomach, you know? So, but then, you know, Bomb makes his way out of it and he tries to break the orb, but he can't. And obviously cutting back to like his story with Rachel, that's another thing I don't remember if that was... that's probably exactly from the manhwa. I just can't remember. Because I feel like... it might have cut back in between there, but I felt... because I kept trying to remember whether or not the stuff about Bomb and Rachel came before all the whole test takes place, or was it like it is in the anime where they cut back and forth? I think it was cutting back and forth, but I feel like it might have been told before everything went down in the test. Like I said, I don't remember. Because a lot of this might be like literally panel for panel, if I'm not mistaken. Well, it's like I said, except for like the intro being the way it is, like starting at the end, and also like introducing you to other characters without telling you their name, but just showing you. And if you read it, you're like, oh, you're showing these characters. Like I said, if it didn't work, and I'm like I said, it's been years, so I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correct. I don't think they started by introducing, like showing those characters to you. Once again, could be wrong, but once again, Evan giving the advice of like, right, if you want to survive, call out to Black March and ask it for its power. Which Yuri's like, that thing doesn't even work for me. Why would it work for... And he does, and it responds, which I love the whole shtick about like, wait, has it not listened to me the entire time because it prefers men? And it's just like, yep, go away, girl. And she's just like, it pissed her off so much. I also love that she, like, Evan was like, have you fallen in love with this boy at first sight? She punches him in the head. I was like, poor Evan. He's always suffering Yuri's abuse, you know? But I guess there's no place he would rather be by her side. But it's just like, he always constantly suffers her abuse. And I think that's so interesting, too, because you would immediately think, like, Evan's some, like, schmuck if he's, like, getting kicked around like that. It's kind of, I guess, like, the anime thing of, like, no. There's actually a lot more to Evan than you give him credit for. He's actually really good at what he does. But, like, even that whole scene I don't remember. Like, right, Black March having a physical form like that. I'm like, I legitimately forgot about that. Like, I'm like, that has to be straight from the manga. Like I said, I think it's panel for panel. So I'm like, if that's the case, that's so interesting. That must mean, like, I'm trying to remember if that happened. I feel like I do vividly, I feel like I remembered that scene of, like, Yuri being shooed off by Black March. She's like, I will give you your power this one time, and she ends up helping him break the orb, and he ends up going to the next test, accidentally taking Black March with him. And I love that, just Yuri's excuse of like, right, I'm going to do whatever I want to. I need to get back Black March before everyone finds out. Technically, as a princess, I'm not supposed to be running around the like training grounds, but it's what it is what it is. I didn't even remember Hidan just like straight up killing the ill like that. I don't know. Maybe I feel like I remembered like that attack killing. Maybe it just simply does break the orb. I could have sworn like Bomb or something, or like Black March ended up killing the ill, but I guess it was Hidan. I don't remember. But like, you know, for him it's like, oh, this is like very fascinating cast of characters. You know, it's like probably talking about Rachel, Bomb, and now like the princess being there. You know, Yuri and Evan and everything. So, and immediately moving on to the next test is like, dude, seeing some faces, I'm like, yo, I know you, oh, dude, this is so crazy. I also feel like, maybe I'm mistaken, like, the comic is bloody, but I feel like I don't once again, I could be remembering wrong. And if I'm also not mistaken, I'm going to be doing that a lot. I'm so apologetic. This is going to be terrible, just because I'm going to be all over the place, but I think these are two separate chapters, like, if I'm not mistaken, like, the first test is its own chapter, the beginning of this is its own chapter, and then where the episode ends going into episode 2 is the third chapter, if I'm not mistaken. Because that's also another thing I'm interested in is to find out, like, how they, like, group a lot of this stuff together, like, how much, like, how much, like, is going to be squeezed into episodes, you know? Because if I remember correctly, the manhwas aren't, like, long. I don't think it's long, like, per chapter. They're fairly short, if I remember correctly. Because I think it also depends on, like, the formatting in which they're read, whether it's, like, pages at a time or whether it's just, like, scrolling down through the entire... Regardless, I'm going on a whole tangent, but, Bomb's asking Black March for help, and it's like, nope, I told you one time. I mean, it doesn't even talk to him, but, him... like, literally running for its life, but, you know, it's like, right, all the regulars, there's 400 of you, gotta get this down to 200, start now. And I love that, like, once again, we literally by the end of the episode, we got the squad together. I'm like, yo, I won't say anybody's name because obviously the show hasn't gotten to the point that they introduced them. They'll be at the beginning of the next episode, I'm sure, but I'm like, they're literally there, a triangle formation from each other. I'm like, it's the boys, it's the squad together. It's like, it makes me giddy because it makes me think of something later on that's just like, it's like a mirror image to this to a certain extent. That's so beautiful. Like I said, it's a little spoilery, but that's just what it made me think of. And I was like, dude, nice way to end off the first episode. Like I said, I spent the entire time rambling about like the manhwa without going into spoilers, but also just like talking about like, oh, this is what happened, I think, but I don't remember. I'm going to try and fix that going forward. But it's just like I said, I just got so excited. Because I actually forgot that Bomb holds on to Black March for a while. It's a while before it potentially ends up back in. Oh, let's just face it. But it's a while before it ends up back in Yuri's hands. Interesting circumstances of how it ends up back in her hands. We'll leave it at that. But I'm so excited to continue watching this. It's like, dude, and like I said, just seeing so many familiar seeing our giant alligator friend, we'll just refer to him as that for now, being like, hey, I sense it. It's like, nah, it's not the lizard. It's the weapon she's holding. And it's like, if you may or may not have noticed, the sword she has very similar markings to Black March. It's those are very special swords. I think the fact that she has it hints to like her being like, oh, like she's someone important. I mean, of course, because she's in the intro, so it was like, of course, she was going to be someone important. I also thought it was kind of interesting, like the opening to this anime, the anime, opening scenes and stuff like that, and music. That's what I mean by the opening. It's so interesting that intro, because most anime intros will have something, they'll take bits from the actual anime itself. It's like, that intro doesn't tell you much, because the entire intro focuses on Bomb, and I was like, oh, I was wondering whether it was going to like wink and nod or spoil anything for the future. It's like, nah, I mean, maybe contextualizing some of that stuff, maybe you could take something from it, but it's like, no, in general, it's like, it literally doesn't tell you anything about what's coming up. But I'm just excited all around, because I'm so curious to see, once again, just how much they squeeze into these episodes, and just, once again, just like having it wash over me again of like, right, it's been years since I read the beginning of it, even though I've read it twice, it's still been years again since then, so I've forgotten a lot of stuff, but, I'm so excited to see where things kind of go. Our lizard friend, you kind of know what he's all about, looking for a powerful foe, looking for his quote-unquote prey, and then our blue-haired friend, you can kind of get a little peek of his personality, being like the whole like, oh, I'm better than you type of, thinks he's better and smarter than everybody else mentality that he has. But even talking to his opponent like, oh, really? Like, you're just going to go with, you're just someone that enjoys being controlled because like, you were told like to get the number from 400 to 200, and here you are playing your role in it. So interesting developments. Like I said, I'm going to change things up a little bit next episode, hopefully. But I'm curious how because most things, like, I go into it not having any idea. I don't know how to balance that now that I have more of an idea of like what's going on because I've read the story. So like that's going to be an interesting balance for me when it comes to these reviews going forward. So like I said, I'm going to be working out the kinks to this. I know this was a hot mess. I do apologize, but like I said, I got too giddy about it, and that might be an issue. But I'll try to rein that back in and rein that in for the future episodes, and try to like calmly just like break things down, and also contextualize some stuff of like maybe future knowledge with maybe without spoiling things. But yeah, I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.